Picture yourself as the organizer of the biggest celebration your continent has ever seen. Almost $1 billion has already been spent getting everything ready. Huge stadiums have been built, new highways stretch across the country, and whole parts of cities have been rebuilt, all for 1 month long event. The whole nation is watching you closely, expecting not merely a successful event, but total domination on the field. Then everything goes wrong. Not only do you lose, you are completely embarrassed in front of a global audience. Fans fill the streets in anger. Buses are burnt and parts of the stadium are damaged. Your manager is so embarrassed that he is fired while the tournament is still going on. It looks like everything is over for you. A shame for your country and a joke for the whole football world. And then something unbelievable occurs. A chain of unlikely results revives you mathematically. Suddenly, you're a team that should already be gone, but yet somehow, defying logic, defying probabilities, and ignoring every rational prediction, you begin to win. Actually, there's no need to imagine this scenario because it truly happened. This is the tale of one of the wildest, most irrational, and unforgettable campaigns ever witnessed in international football. This is the story of the Ivory Coast during the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations. To appreciate just how insane this journey was, you first need to grasp the environment in Abidjan. The Ivory Coast lives and breathes football. They have a team that possesses plenty of quality, including players performing in elite European leagues such as Seko Fofana, Sébastien Haller, and Franck Kessié. At the same time, the government had spent huge sums to stage the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations, and the public expectations was brutally simple: win the trophy. To guide the team, the federation appointed Jean-Louis Gasset, a veteran French coach. He had decades of experience, but he had never coached within the unpredictable chaos of African international football. His philosophy emphasized calm possession play, something critics believe was too slow for the physical, high-intensity battles typical of AFCON. But an even larger issue appeared before the tournament had even started. Two of the squad's most dangerous attackers, Simon Adingra and Sébastien Haller, were injured. They were selected anyway, but they were not fit enough to participate during the group stage. That meant Gasset was making a huge gamble, trusting that the team could survive the early matches without them. When the competition began, though, that gamble seemed momentarily brilliant. The opening game felt like a festival. The stadium was drenched in orange colors. The crowd was thunderous, and the Ivory Coast performed exactly as expected. They defeated Guinea-Bissau national football team 2-0. Just 4 minutes in, Seko Fofana blasted a spectacular goal that calmed the nerves of the entire country. Everything appeared under control. Supporters danced, players radiated confidence, and concern about the injured stars began to fade. But that sense of comfort turned out to be a mirage. In the second match, reality crashed down when they faced Nigeria national football team. Nigeria constructed a defensive wall the Ivorians simply couldn't penetrate. Without Haller present in the penalty area, Ivory Coast circulated the ball endlessly without threat. Then calamity arrived in the 55th minute. A young Ivorian defender, Ousmane Diomande, lost control in the penalty area and gave away a penalty. Nigeria converted, secured a 1-0 victory, and the pressure returned instantly. Still, there was no full-scale panic yet. Ivory Coast had 3 points. All they need was a result in the final group match against Equatorial Guinea national football team, a tiny country whose population is smaller than my neighborhood. It should have been an easy win for Ivory Coast. Instead, the world witnessed one of the most astonishing collapses in football history. On January 22, 2024, the Ivory Coast didn't merely lose, they disintegrated. Even though they controlled possession, their defense unraveled completely. Equatorial Guinea counter-attacked with brutal efficiency, slicing through them effortlessly. By the 75th minute, the scoreboard read 3-0 for the underdogs. The stadium that normally echoed with drums and chants sank into shocked silence. Fans wept in the stand. Others streamed toward the exit, unable to watch any longer. Then it became even worse. In the 88th minute, Equatorial Guinea scored again, 4-0. It was the worst defeat ever suffered by a host nation in the history of the Africa Cup of Nations. This was a national humiliation. Yet the real chaos had only begun outside the stadium. When the match ended, grief quickly transformed into fury. Supporters believed they had been promised glory and received disgrace instead. Riots erupted in Abidjan. Angry crowds attacked the team buses, hurling rocks through the windows. The players remained locked inside the dressing rooms for hours because it was too dangerous to leave. Police deployed tear gas to disperse protesters, burning tires across the city center. Some furious fans even attempted to storm the headquarters of the National Football Federation. Everything had collapsed. The standings left Ivory Coast third in Group A with a goal difference of -3. In a typical tournament, that means elimination. The country assumed the campaign was finished. The humiliation was so severe that the federation took an almost unheard of step. They didn't wait until the tournament ended. 2 days after the loss, the coach Jean-Louis Gasset was sacked. But here is where the story becomes bizarre. Even after that nightmare performance, Ivory Coast was not mathematically eliminated. The AFCON format allows the 4 best third-place teams to reach the knockout stage. Because the Ivorians still had 3 points, a microscopic chance remained that they could sneak through. However, the goal difference was awful. They needed a miracle. Results in other groups had to unfold in very precise ways. So, Ivory Coast became a team without direction, without a coach, and without pride, sitting inside a hotel praying for scores elsewhere. In desperation, the federation tried something astonishing. They contacted the French Football Federation asking to temporarily borrow Hervé Renard, who was coaching the French women's national team. It was essentially a plea for rescue. France declined, so the Ivory Coast was on its own. An assistant coach, Emers Faye, was promoted, despite never having managed a senior team before. Then, something extraordinary happened. 2 very specific results were needed in other groups. First, Ghana had to drop points. In Group B, Ghana national football team led Mozambique national football team 2-0 in the 90th minute. It looked finished. Ghana would advance and Ivory Coast would be eliminated. Then chaos arrived. Mozambique scored a penalty in the 91st minute, 2-1. 3 minutes later, a catastrophic mistake by the Ghanaian goalkeeper conceded a corner. From that corner, Mozambique scored again, 2-2. Ghana collapsed in stoppage time, and Ivory Coast survived by the thinnest thread. On the final day of the group stage, one more event had to occur. Morocco national team needed to defeat Zambia national football team. Even a draw would eliminate the hosts. Morocco was already qualified and had nothing tangible to gain. In fact, some teams might have been tempted to ease off and quietly remove the dangerous rival from the tournament. But Morocco chose integrity. They won 1-0. Just like that, with 3 points in a -3 goal difference, Ivory Coast squeezed into the knockout stage as the final third-place qualifier. Statistically, they were the weakest remaining team in the tournament. In the round of 16, they faced Senegal national football team. Senegal were the defending champions and had won all 3 group matches. Within 4 minutes, Habib Diallo scored 1-0 for Senegal. For 80 minutes, Senegal controlled the match. Ivory Coast team destined for a quiet exit. In the 86th minute, the Ivory Coast team finally stirred. Nicolas Pepe drove into the penalty area and was fouled. Penalty. Who would take it? Fred Kessié, the man who had started the match on the bench. The pressure was huge. If he missed, the miracle one was over.
Up against Mendy, and he finds the back of the net, and Ivory Coast are level.
1-1. The match went to extra time, then penalties. In the shootout, Ivory Coast converted every kick. Kessié again stepped up and scored the winning penalty. The defending champions were eliminated. Ivory Coast were alive. Yet the quarterfinal against Mali national football team would produce even more madness. The first half was chaotic for Ivory Coast again. They conceded a penalty, but goalkeeper Yaha Fofana saved it. Then disaster struck just before halftime. Defender Odilo Kosono received a second yellow card and was sent off. Ivory Coast would play the entire second half with 10 men. Mali attacked relentlessly and finally scored in the 71st minute through Nene Dorgeles. 1-0. 19 minutes remained. It looked finished, but Emers Faye had one last move. Remember the injured players, Simon Azigra and Sebastian Heller? They were finally healthy. The coach sent them onto the field. In the 90th minute, the ball fell to Azingra inside the box. He smashed it home. 1-1. The stadium erupted. They had forced extra time while down a man. 30 minutes with 10 players is exhausting though. Mali dominated the extra period. Ivory Coast clogged on, hoping for penalties. Then the final minute arrived. A free kick for Ivory Coast. The ball was crossed into the box and cleared out toward Seko Fofana, who fired a shot. It was heading wide, but substitute Oumar Diakite flicked his heel at it. The ball changed direction and rolled into the net. 2-1. Last kick of the match, 10 men, the stadium trailed. Diakite celebrated so widely, he removed his shirt, received a second yellow card, and was sent off. Ivory Coast ended the game with 9 players, but they were going to semi-finals anyway. And now, the story shifted from chaos to redemption. In the semi-final, they faced DR Congo national football team. Sebastien Haller, who had overcome testicular cancer only 18 months earlier, started the match. He had missed the group stage disaster entirely. In the 65th minute, Haller struck a bouncing volley that skipped over the goalkeeper and into the net. 1-0. They defended the lead until the end of the match. 2 weeks earlier, they were effectively dead. Now, they were in the final. Standing in their way was their earlier tormentor, Nigeria. The same Nigeria that beat them in the group stage and possessed the tournament's best defense, conceding only 2 goals in 6 matches. A chance for Ivory Coast to rewrite history had arrived, but Nigeria had other plans. In the 38th minute, Captain William Troost-Ekong headed in a corner. Nigeria lead 1-0. Once again, the Ivorians trailed at halftime, but this team had already experienced worse than that. Being down a goal was nothing compared with sitting in a hotel praying for Mozambique to score. The second half belonged to youth and resilience. Simon Adigra began tormenting Nigeria's defense with relentless words. In the 62nd minute, he delivered a corner kick. Waiting in box was Frank Kessie. He headed
Nabale, back post chance, goal!
1-1. Momentum shifted instantly. Nigeria looked rattled by the roaring stadium and the relentless energy of the Ivorian players. Then came the decisive moment. In the 81st minute, Adingra attacked down the left wing and whacked a post toward the near post. Just stood Sebastien Haller, the man who defeated cancer, the striker who missed the group stage, the player who almost never got the chance to participate. He extended his leg and redirected the ball with the stud of his boot. It flew into the far corner. Boom. 2-1.
Great ball, it's a goal!
Now, Ivory Coast only needed to survive 10 more minutes. They did. When the referee blew the final whistle, the country didn't simply celebrate. It erupted into pure euphoria.
What a fairy tale story here!
The impossible had happened. Ivory Coast became the first team ever to lose a group match by 4 goals and still win the tournament. They were also the first host nation to lift the trophy since 2006 Africa Cup of Nations won by Egypt national football team. From riots in the streets to champions of the continent, from firing the manager to raising the trophy above their head, Ivory Coast proved that in football, if a team still has even the faintest spark of life, or even if it seemed already dead, the story is never truly finished. If you enjoy football stories like these, subscribe to the channel because the game always has another unbelievable story waiting.